So thank you everyone for being here this morning. My name is Professor Mark Nolan and I'm the Director of the Centre for Law and Justice. You'll notice I've started the recording. All of our speakers today are happy to be recorded, and those recordings will be posted on the Intensive Hub with PowerPoint slides posted there as well, I expect. I acknowledge that I'm here on the land of the Wiradyuri people under the shadow of Wiradyuri here on campus at Charles Sturt, where the eagles do soar and the kangaroos I spotted with joeys in pouches yesterday on campus are jumping around. I pay my respects to Wiradyuri elders past, present and emerging as custodians of these lands, and I encourage you to type in the chat today the lands that you are on. I pay respects to all First Nations people on this call today. It's my great pleasure to directly hand over to our Wiradyuri elders in residence to start our day for us. We want to begin by privileging First Nations voices in these important discussions, and that will start with our elders in residence. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're all attempting to relearn to live in the world without the elder we lost last year, and I thank him and all resilient elders who are present here today for their wisdom, their support and their education of us before now and always. Over to one of our elders in residence to start the day for us.
Auntie?
Yeah, I was just checking. Can you hear me? Because
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, good, Auntie. Thank you.
I've had some tech issues. It updated the computer, so yeah. So in Wiradyuri, we say Naring Marang Biambo, which is good morning all. Gawambana and welcome. You and Nadi Wirraby. That's my traditional name. My Wiradyuri name is Wirraby. My English name is Leanna Carr-Smith, and I come to you today on sovereign Wiradyuri land, and my people have been here since time immemorial. In Wiradyuri, we call that the Gujeen, the dreaming, like the creation time. We have been involved in this course for a really long time. It's always good to have a little bit of nerves. And if I have any interruptions, it's because I've got my little grandson here having a sleepover. So if you hear me talking, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to him. But it's pretty, this course was pretty important to us, and I was one of the elders who was real instrumental in the framing of it and how it should, and how our messages and how our content should sit inside of it. So there'll be a really strong First Nations content right throughout the whole course when you move through it. Just to let you know that we don't talk about anybody else's, any other mob, any other, we make reference to them. We only just use our own experience with the law and justice system as Wiradyuri. And we will reach out sometimes and use referencing of other First Nations people, but we don't and we won't talk about anybody else. But we look forward to seeing everybody this afternoon in the Yawalingia session, and we encourage you to come. If you have any questions that you have like throughout the morning, you can just write them down and, you know, ask us in that session this afternoon. Just special mention, welcome to our special guests, and every single one of yous are, but to our guest speakers today too. So go on Bana Biambo, and I hope you have a good day. I'll hand it over to Yana.
Wanangu, thanks, Arnie. And yeah, look, just to reiterate, welcome everyone, especially our guests, and a big shout out to the other First Nations mob in the room. It's important that we can have days like today and discussions like the one we're going to have And we're going to come to you, like as Auntie said, we're going to give you a Wiradyuri centric kind of view on things. We're going to talk about our lived experience and our personal insights. We're going to keep you culturally safe while we do that. And I'm not sure if you've come across that term before, so I'll just do a little bit of a share here. So yeah, look, we're purposefully frameworked what we're going to talk to you in Wiradyuri elements of law. And the cultural safety part of it is this very simple meaning here. So cultural safety means an environment which is spiritually, socially, and emotionally safe, as well as physically safe for people, where there's no assault, challenge, or denial of your identity. It's about shared respect, shared meaning, shared knowledge and experience of learning together with dignity and truly listening. So that's pretty much our main expectation today, is that you'll look after our cultural safety, we'll look after yours. Another part of the cultural safety that we like to set up before we do these kind of activities is we like to explain the concept of Yinjamal Jurai Yalvalinya Mawang, which is a Wiradyuri term that means two-way respectful learning together. So we hope to learn something from not only the other speakers, but also you as participants, as student lawyers. You know, we want to learn from you as well. So that means it's a two-way conversation. With our contribution today, we don't just want to talk at you. We want to interact with you. We want to have a yarn. We want to have a, you know, we want to get some feedback. So if you could, in the chat for us, give us a bit of an indication about what you want to get out of today. It can be 3 words, it can be 3 sentences, but just something, a little bit of interaction to begin the day. Let us know, you know, what you want to get out of today. The other thing too, with the cultural safety that we like to set up, is that we want you to ask questions, and you've got access to us as First Nations mob and community elders. And there's no question inside of this culturally safe framework that we're in today that's abrasive, offensive, wrong, bad, etc. You can ask any question of us in this environment, and we will keep you safe in this environment with the answers that we give. So please keep that in mind as we go. Best way to do it is to just chuck your question in the chat, or you can direct message myself or Auntie Leona or Mark if that's the case. But again, yeah, look, to our guest speakers today, a warm welcome to digital Wiradyuri country. We're really, really happy to be involved, and to the students and the participants, we're stoked to be able to, you know, give you a bit of access to our world and where we come from, where we take our community responsibility really seriously. And part of that is Auntie and I do get called from time to time to go and spend time down at the police station when our young people get banged up. So we've got a bit of experience in just, you know, being in that environment with young people while the police ask them questions and do what else, you know, whatever else police do. So we're happy to kind of yarn to you about that. We've had a few experiences in that regard. And then, you know, we've also had interactions with different various legislations as community custodians. Caring for country is one of our key responsibilities. And so you might have heard about the go-kart track saga in Bathurst. So we were in the middle of that, and we were able to protect a piece of really significant, spiritually significant piece of country through invoking various state and federal legislation. So we're happy to talk about that too. But Auntie, I think I've blabbed on long enough. What else did you want to say?
No, I think that's it. I'm just looking at the chat, and I think that it's really important that you put your type it in and put your expectations in. What is it that you want, you know, that you want to get from today, especially the knowledge from us, because like Yana said, this is an opportunity for you to ask those questions in a culturally safe space.
I've got a question for you. I didn't run this by Mark or anyone. I just sort of thought of it. But what do you want out of these future lawyers that are in the room? What do you want for our mob when it comes to these guys in the room and how they're going to interact with our mob when they come out the other end with their qualifications and degrees and go into various different work? Auntie? That's a question.
So for me, I want people to have cultural knowledge. I want them to be able to engage with First Nations people in a culturally safe way, and also be aware of the sensitivities that sit inside of our community and the important things that are that affect mob and the reason why things happen the way that they do, and also be non-judgmental. The parity, non-parity, or the privilege that other people in the world we live in have, where we're disadvantaged under colonisation. And I can speak, and so can you, Yana. A lot of First Nations people can speak just from personal experiences. I'm not ashamed to say it, because I do have members of my family that are some of those numbers on that deaths in custody. I've had family members of my own that were instrumental in lobbying the federal government over 40 years ago to have an inquiry, a royal commission. So sadly for me and Yana and other First Nations people, we've got a lived experience, and that trauma sits inside of every single generation. And like I said, I've got my little granny here today, and he's the sort of, that's the next generation that we need to educate and protect. And also, you know, we are the first citizens of this land. So that's probably a big expectation from me, but mainly about having the knowledge to engage with First Nations people and the protocols that come with that, the generic protocols that we can gift as elders, so that wherever you decide to go, or whatever field or profession that you want to go into, you'll have generic knowledge of First Nations people and how to engage, especially with the issues, those social justice issues that affect us. You know, we all know what they are. We don't need to go there. But if you'd like to ask a question, we welcome it in the chat, and we'll try and answer it to the best of our knowledge. And if we can't, we can flick the email back through Mark.
Mandangu to you, Wiradyuri, and to Yana. I've noticed that Dinawan Jiribang, one of the other elders in residence, Uncle Bill Allen, is on the line as well. So feel free to jump on the mic now, Dinawan, if you'd like. And in the time between now and 9:30, again, Yana, Wiradyuri, Dinawan, if you've got some stories, and I know you have, about the important community work you do with young people who are arrested, interviewed, charged, and remanded in custody. If you feel like you want to share those stories now before 9:30, that really sets us up for understanding the importance of the minimum age of criminal responsibility law reform in our theme today, lawyers and law reform, and what you want to tell future lawyers about the importance of some of that work and the impact of the minimum age. But Dinawan, I think I saw your name flash up on the screen.
He did call me and say he's having technical difficulties.
Yes, he was on and off. Is that right? So look over to either of you, Yana and Wiradyuri, as you feel you want to contribute between now and 9:30.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, so in Bathurst, where we live in, this is the Eastern Wiradyuri Nation. Bathurst, the dynamics in our community are made up of the First Nations community, I should say, is made up of many nations. Bathurst is a resettlement community, and that happened over probably 30 years ago. A lot of First Nations people that came into the community 30 years ago on the premise of job opportunities, better housing, educational opportunities for their families, came into the community under this what they call resettlement program. So fast forward to 2023, a lot of our families stuck around. So there's not just Wiradyuri people that live in our community, there's people from all nations. We don't discriminate. We work with everybody. That, you know, black politics is the worst politics to get involved in. Never get involved. That's your first point, is never get involved in community issues. Always try, and if you get the opportunity to have a yarn or mediate or even facilitate conversations, that has to be done with permissions from all parties. The thing what we do is I always get a little bit apprehensive, I suppose, about talking about this, because as elders, we don't necessarily go around blowing our own trumpet and telling everybody what we do. We, if it's part of our law, we sit in the honour part of law right now. So, because we're still finishing off our sorry business. And the thing with this is, we help everybody. We've been able to defuse situations in our community that really could have got out of control, especially with the youth. And the relationship that we've had with the Chiefly Command Officer, and sadly for us, he retired and went back to La Perouse. He was actually a staunch old policeman from way back. But for us, he actually lived in a lot of our remote communities. And there was a situation that we think, and without sort of giving too much away, it got really bad. It was really heated. It was, do you know what it was about? I'll tell you exactly what it was about. It was an incident at the pool, at the local pool. An Aboriginal child picked up a ball, right, a big floaty ball, and was just playing with it because it was just there. So the pool instructor yelled at the child and said, "That's not yours, give it back." So the child threw the ball back, and the instructor missed it and had to pick it up, and that's how it started. They asked him to get out of the pool, wanted to remove him from the pool. The whole family was there. If you've ever been to Bathurst in the summer, it's about 45 degrees in the shade. And they were asked to leave the pool. And it got really heated quickly. And the mothers and the aunties went into protective mode. And police got called. The riot squad turned up to these kids. And it was pretty horrific what we had to deal with, because we know the family personally, and we know that that family sit with a lot of trauma, a lot of deaths in custody. I'm talking about transgenerational trauma. You name it, that family is affected by it. And it took a little while for us to sort that out. And it was probably for Yana and I, especially being the youngest of our elders, it sort of re-traumatizes us every time we do things like this. The end result of it was okay. The family still live in town. We had to do a lot of community work as elders, and we had to call other community people to come in. But that's our part of our role and responsibility to our mob.
Now that pool, that local pool, participated in a lot of the different activities during the year, like NAIDOC week and stuff like that. They've actually got a dialogue with members of the community now, and things are a lot more positive than they were. The staff have had a little bit of orientation around cultural, just culture in general. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. And then, part of the other work that Auntie and I do is we get the calls in the middle of the night every now and then. Thank goodness it's not every week, where a young person's down at the police station, and if they're under the age of what's the age?
10.
If they're under the age of 10, yeah. Well, if they're a child, actually, I think if they're under the age of 18, they've got to have an adult with them, or a support person. And a lot of our community are quite transient. So we've got mob that live in, they'll live between Cowra and Bathurst, and they'll have aunties and uncles out at, Arambi or whatever. And this one instance that really shook me was a young person having a fight with their mother. Their mother didn't want to bar of them, and there was no one else that could care for this person. So I was called in to just sit with them. Usually we get legal aid on the phone if we can't get them there in person. Usually they say, don't say anything, which I find is probably the best thing, just given that the police are there to get a charge. They're not there to care for anyone or to, look after anyone. And so we were ringing around the whole countryside looking for someone that could look after this young person, and no one could come. So this young person had to stay in the lockup for God knows how long. And then I was there for, I don't know, I was there for almost a full day. I had to go. I've got kids of my own. And it's just horrible, knowing that there was no family in town for this person, and knowing that they were just going to be alone in a cell, and what that does psychologically to a person. Like, I've been locked up as a young person. I know what it's like. It's really shit. And just that fear that we've got a fear of the Gungis, and it's in our DNA. Whenever we see a uniform, we get a shudder, and that's something that gets passed to our children as well. And so just the fear that this young person had about what could happen, what might happen, and the stories that we've heard, of being taken 10 Ks out and in the paddy wagon and just dropped off and given a boot up the bum and stuff like that. Like, that stuff happens. But yeah, look, I didn't have a solution for this young person. That was really frustrating. One of their family members eventually did like step up to the plate, so to speak. But the whole thing was really traumatizing for that young person, and for me as someone that was just there to make sure that they were being treated respectfully and okay in that situation. But that's, that was one instance that sort of really stuck with me. There's been others that have actually had a more positive outcome, where they've been able to get back to their family relatively quickly, and then deal with whatever the charges or whatever the other issues were. And the less time they spend in there, the better. But yeah, it's just tricky. That's just one of the bits and pieces that Auntie and I do. And then we do a lot of education in the schools as well. But yeah, did you have any yarns about like raising the age? I think is the yarn that's going to be happening later on, Auntie. Like,
how old were the people you were talking about in both of your stories, Wiradyuri and Yana?
These were children, so they were under 10. And if you're sort of not aware of it, we travel in mobs, but that's a part of our kinship, and it's a part of our cultural responsibility is to look after each other and also the children that belong in our clan group. So this particular family we're talking about, there was mothers and aunties, and there were also kids under 10, and there were also some older children too.
Yeah. The young person that they couldn't find a family member for a few days was, I think, about 8. And then usually they range from the youngest that I've had. That was the youngest that I'd ever sort of come into support. And then they're as old as like 16, 17 sometimes. But yeah, usually between 8 and 16.
And so the child who picked the ball up was under 10. So he was 8. And then the cousin who came in and sort of called it out and said, what's going on? He was 14. He was 13, 14, which is above 10, but it doesn't make a difference. It was all over a ball. And it's absolutely ridiculous that we're even talking about it. It's really hard for Yana and I to sit inside of those spaces, especially because of the fear we've been that's been driven into us as when we were kids about police. My family doesn't have a good reputation with the police. We call them Gungis in our language, And there's certainly been a lot of death in my family that's, you know, the police have been involved in. The outcome, it took a long time and it took a lot of negotiation with the Chifley Command. And he was very firm about what he wanted to do. And we were really firm about what we wanted. You know, they wanted to have the child charged and, you know, put him in JJ's, juvenile justice, and all this over a ball and over the incident. There was allegations of inciting a riot. All of the charges were just, what, 5, nearly 6 charges. There was lots and lots of charges. We were able to negotiate on the family's behalf with the Chifley Command, who has at that time had great authority, and especially within the police, within the court system here inside of Bathurst. So that's just sort of a little bit of what happened, not the moving in between the two spaces.
But the kid was, I mean, the kid was racially profiled. Let's not beat around the bush with that. Like, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And just to put it, and just to give it a bit of clarity, it was around this time of the year. So Yana and I both have to live in this community. Bathurst is the most racist town in Australia, if we want to have votes on it. The benefits of what we do is we have a lot of allies in our community. There were a lot of non-Aboriginal people that were at the pool that day, and they actually came to us after and said, we seen what happened. That child was racially vilified, like that child was racially profiled. What are you going to do about it? And with what the statements that we had got from like allies around community, then that's how we were able to negotiate with the church, with the you know, what we call the Burramartha, the boss man. And it took a long time. Unfortunately for the rest of our mob, they don't have the you know, sometimes English is a second language to them. Their educational level may not go past primary school, may not go past, you know, the first year of high school. Yana and I have, you know, we were horrible kids. Yana was, I wasn't. I'm just making him feel better. And we, you know, we done, I suppose, what our old people needed us to do was get educated and look after our mob. And we've done that since the day that was given, that responsibility was given to us. We don't get paid for any of this. There's no paycheck at the end of the day. We do it for the love of our community and the love of our mob, and also because we want the wider community to see us as, well, human beings for a start. And, you know, the whole incident was just really and truly just taken out of context. It just went from this little tiny thing and it just went bigger. You know,
if you do need to take time away from the screen, guys, if anything that we talk about is triggering, please do that. Just let Mark, myself, or Auntie know that you're going to just take a bit of time out. And if you need to do that, please just do it. We've got to look after ourselves. Some of the stuff, you know, can be difficult to talk about and to listen to. So please keep that in mind. Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks for some of the rich comments in the chat, Christy, Claire, others. And thank you so much for those stories, difficult stories to tell, and very weighty stories. I've seen Dinawan's face pop up on the screen. I've seen it pop off the screen. He's been frozen. I think you're there, Dinawan. So just respect and hi to you as well. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop a recording and restart a recording each time we change between speakers. So there's chance for a bit of a stretch break. It's a bit of a pause now as I do that, and then introduce our new speakers. But big mandanguru to the elders in residence who have started us off thinking about some of these issues, as difficult as they are, on a very important day for us. So thank you again. I'll just stop and restart that recording.
Thanks,
And just
Arnie.
before, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mandanguru, Mark. Just before we finish up, we encourage you to come to our session, like I said, this afternoon, just to have a yarn, because we want to talk about some of the cultural protocols and that we can give you. And it'll give you the opportunity to ask a bit more, a few more questions, and we can just have a yarn about it. We, like I said, sadly for us, but you know, I think it benefits our community that we are who we are, and we have the contacts that we have in our community. You know, the contacts that we have. We're happy to yarn about this a bit more. I think that it's really important that you hear from elders directly about why we need to raise the age, and the impact that it has not just on the child but also the family. So we're happy to go into that conversation in a bit more depth this afternoon.
Thank you. And that starts at 12:30. Just stay on the same Zoom link and you'll reconvene with the elders there. So everyone's welcome. Okay, I'm stopping and restarting that recording.